Welcome to the Capability Amplifier, the show for business owners and entrepreneurs who want high-performance upgrades for their brains, bodies, and bank accounts.
Hello.
All right, Joe Polish, we're here today, and for you watching, listening at home, the reason we're here on this episode of Capability Amplifier is we're with the legendary Joe Polish. Now, he is, and I say that because we've known each other, I was thinking about it, 15 years. And if I look back historically, most of my finest connections and relationships I have in business, who it also extends into personal, are people that either directly or indirectly I met through you. And what everyone I know who knows you refers you as, among other things, is a super connector, which basically means you're able to manage relationships and introduce right fit people and frame a conversation in a way that turns into a super valuable or a hyper valuable relationship later on. And it is an unusual skill set because you've been doing it so long. So every episode of Capability Amplifier, the whole idea is to give the listener or viewer it's like a matrix style upgrade for their brain. How can they model how you think, how you behave, and ultimately build their skills, their wisdom, their capabilities beyond what they have. So with that, I want to just start out. Oh, and we're here with Dave Asprey, who is founder of Bulletproof Coffee.
And we're just in some living room with cackling noise in the background and stuff like that. But
we've been at this amazing resort in Alaska and finished our third day of fishing. I think we all got our limits. And we're here because of you. So I thought the best way to start this up is, what's the worst relationship or connection that you really regret ever hooking up?
Oh, well, boy, there's many of those. No, you know, it's kind of funny. When you introduced me, you said a lot of people refer to you as a super connector, amongst other things. I was most interested in what are all the other things that people refer to me as.
PG, right?
No, and it doesn't have to be. Well, let's just say that you have very predictable language patterns and insults that come out of your mouth as well.
You know, honestly,
that are really endearing.
No, that's the key point. You know, you want to charm and disarm people as much as one can, and that's not languaging I put on myself. That's actually Bab Smith, who's partners and married to Dan Sullivan, our good friend at Strategic Coach, and she said, "Yeah, Joe charms and disarms," and however one does that, it could be, through giving someone an idea, a connection, or really dissing them in the most inappropriate ways.
Yeah, the most inappropriate
I was going to get to it. I mean, I'm not trying to put on an act here.
Don't put lipstick on it.
No, there are 3 tiers to Joe. I'd say maybe there's 5, but there's the, hey, nice to meet you the first time. Maybe he's a nice boy and you could introduce him to grandma and bring him to church. And then there's the normal business, and then there's level 3, and it's like, did he really say that?
Well, let me speak to that though, because see, there are some humans that have situational ethics, which I do not like. There's also situational behavior. Most people, unless for whatever, health reasons, religious reasons, most people have drank beer, right? Most people have been to church. Not all, and not everyone's drank beer, and not everyone's been to church. But most people that have drank beer have also, at some point have probably been to church, but you don't drink beer in church. Right? There are certain situations you're not going to say certain things in certain contexts, and we live in such a, of course, the term politically correct gets thrown around. Although you have to wonder, what does that even mean? The thing with being a human that connects is when you say authentic, and this person's so real. And there's a lot of people in personal development that I know are total scoundrels, and they can get up on stage and they can say things in a way, and people are like, oh, I really love them because they're so authentic, or they're so real. And it's like, if you really knew, how just inauthentic they are, that they could say something in such a manner that makes people believe them to be authentic. So the fact is, there's a side
of... So who specifically would be the worst example of that?
Part of it is, there's another saying too, if you're going to stab the queen, make sure you kill her, right? And so if you're going to go out and just try to take someone down and pick fights, it's not a good way to connect. There's a lot of people that really, at some point in time, deserve to be called out for their crap and it gets to a point, but you got to actually know the difference between winning a battle and winning a war. There's a lot of people I would love to say.
Dodging a question like that, like not integrity?
No, it's not dodging. I was going to give it to you. So who is the worst relationship, Dave, that you have ever encountered? Because I'd rather hear from you, because it may be the same person.
I'm really pissed off, Joe, because a while back I connected with you. JJ Virgin said, Dave, you should spend $25,000, more than my 2 months marketing budget for my whole company, to go spend a couple days at your event. And I still regret that to this day. I mean, because it led to this whole huge amount of venture fundraising, and do you know how much work it's led for me? I've raised millions and millions of dollars and made great friendships that all resulted in more work because of you. I agree. I could have just been kicking back in a 9-to-5 job if it wasn't for
no. Well, some people pay, like when we're in all of our businesses, because we all in parts of our world, we do events where we bring people together, we teach them. This is called capability amplifier. What people are usually entrepreneurs are paying for capabilities. They're paying for results, right? And there are some people that will sign up for Genius Network and they show up and they want me to do all the work. They just want
shameless plug,
done.
ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there's other people that will show up and they will come to work. They will pay to do work. And that goes for all of your events too. Someone's going to come to a bulletproof conference, or someone's going to come to one of your events and they go, oh, I want Mike to just, give me the magic formula. Now you could teach people everything that you know as best as you can in a condensed time frame, but there are certain ways that people engage and interact with information, with relationships, with all kinds of stuff that has a lot to do with them, not necessarily with just who they're going to.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that leads me to a question that will actually be valuable for the listener here.
Yeah, unlike the last one.
Do you think he'll answer this one?
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to this will be a little bit how-to-y, and then we'll find appropriate squirrel holes to jump into, or rabbit holes along the way.
This is going to be fun. I can just tell already.
So I asked Jason Corman, who's here from Gaping Void, do you have any questions for Joe as it relates to connecting? And here's what he asked. He says, when you want to meet someone, what do you do? And the way he framed this is, for example, when Joe decided he wanted to meet us and Hugh, and maybe just before I go into that, why don't you give your commercial version of Gaping Void and Hugh, the business?
Okay, Hugh McLeod is an artist. Jason Corman is the CEO of a company called Gaping Void. And I like to call it art, but they hate that because they look at it as social objects. And
that's because you can charge about 1,000 times more for it than a $12 book with some pictures and drawings in it.
Of course. Now, but it's brilliant though, because
it's great reframing for sure.
Yeah, and Hugh's first book was called Ignore Everybody, which was filled with profanity and is
brilliant beyond recognition.
And funny at the same time. The second one is called Evil Plans. The third is like blogging in your underwear. So
Is there another way to blog?
Without underwear.
It's called, yeah.
But
you just wanted to go down people don't know if they're watching this video is we're actually doing this and we're not wearing pants. So it's a
I'm
no
actually
pants
wearing
podcast.
pants, so
Okay.
just so you know, these freaks over here. So so they just literally, they do culture walls. They'll help people visually communicate through weird, sort of profound imagery and copy that define, they help people reframe how they think about their company and how their audience, their consumers. That's fire in the background. This is exploding. Yeah. If you can hear that, I don't know if the mic can pick that up.
Yeah, it's actually, I figured there's creaking of the wooden floors and then there's pouring of the coffee because Dave's pouring his,
It's a little late in the day and he's over here drinking coffee, but it's bulletproof coffee. So there you go.
Got to be brand representative all the time.
So no, I've had Gaping Void create all kinds of art and things at my office and my headquarters for my newsletters, through lots of stuff that I put out there, and it just helps people convey things in quick, powerful, profound ways. So I don't know if that's the best description.
It's good enough. So in your case, you've introduced Jason and his whole team to a lot of clients and customers. A lot of Genius Network people have their social, whatever we called it before, that's not art, in their offices. But again, you've introduced a lot of people to Jason. You've been able to frame the relationship. But when you go out and let's say Joe Polish wants to meet someone, so think about the last either impossible to reach or superstar level person you wanted to reach?
Let's make it a real one.
Yeah.
Like, I'm assuming you don't already know her, Oprah. Like, you've wanted to reach Oprah. What would your algorithm look like to get to Oprah?
Well, I've met Oprah twice. Once in like early 2000 at Mirabelle Resort, the first time she went there, and I had a friend at the time who was the spa director, and I had gone down to visit her, and she could not say who the high-profile person was, but I happened to, after I had lunch with her, I was walking around Maryville, which I used to stay at, like, you know, way back in the day when I thought they were way more awesome than my previous experiences. And I ran into Oprah right walking out of the gift shop, and she looked so tired. And this was probably 18 years ago from the time we're doing this. And I just couldn't ask her anything about business because my sense is, and part of that is
empathy.
Yeah, totally. And so I just talked to her about the equine experience, where you go and you do this, one of the processes they offered there with horses.
Well, so what was your opening line? Can you remember? You had to break the gap and separate yourself from the usual herds that would be, Oprah, please do that, whatever.
I don't remember exactly, but I believe it was something along the lines of, how are you? You enjoying yourself here? No saying, oh my God, you're Oprah. No fan sort of, I'm gawking because Oprah, because everyone tries to get to someone.
So you treat her like a real person, first of all.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And say, what have you enjoyed while you've been here? So she says, you looking forward to anything? She goes, I'm trying to decide on some stuff. And I said, you might want to try this. I've done it before. And then I immediately just told her, here's something that I think would be valuable and helpful. But my brain, of course, searches for what would be helpful to this person, which I think if anyone just wants some advice that doesn't sound earth-shattering, is be useful, be generous, offer something. One of my core philosophies is don't ask anybody to do anything for you if you're not able or willing to give value to them first. And value could be making them laugh. That's why I tell a lot of stupid jokes. I mean, there's plenty of people that are servers in a restaurant or something. Mm-hmm. It's not like I want anything other than I would like to add sunshine to everyone's face as best I can, no matter how you go about getting there. And there's a difference between telling someone a joke or busting on someone versus being cruel. There are certain levels. So that's how I did with her. And then another time was at the Oscars in 2006. But I never became friends with her. So to answer the question, I actually am in communication with several people that know her because I would like to do something with Oprah in the field of what I'm working. I spend about half my time helping people with addictions. So I have Genius Recovery. And because I'm I'm an addict, and I was a drug addict, and I have behavioral addictions. And again, I won't go into that stuff here unless you want to talk about it. That's actually
that's not what I want to talk about.
No, but the thing is, I'm actually trying to get to Oprah right now,
in
the right way.
But that might be
in the right way. And so I have friends people that personally know her that are reaching out to her, and literally, I just had a conversation with someone last week that is knows her personally and said, so when I get back from this trip, I may have that sort of connection to see if I can get her to come to one of my events, which is what I'm working on right now.
Right. So, and in your case, and I'm obviously, with regards to the addiction thing, that is a tremendously useful way that you've been able to access some pretty high-level celebrities, because addiction is one of those things that's sort of like the hidden phantasm in our society, all societies, is it runs rampant, and it is a vehicle. And, I was going to say an angle, but that sounds dirty. It's like, I don't think of you as a guy with an angle trying to get in somewhere. You start with a different energetic presence first. And that's really what I want to spend our time talking about, is energetically, how do you want to show up? So I'm going to tell you a story that Jason told me, I know you have something you want to say.
No, I was just saying, if everyone watching this, listening to this, however they're consuming this, we all have opportunities that we want, okay? So in a lot of ways you can say, this person's an opportunist. There's a difference between how you go about pursuing the opportunity. Oprah, as an example, is a very difficult person to get to. This is a person that does not need more money, This is a person that everyone on the planet hopes that, oh, I wish Oprah should see this. And I hear all these people, they're like, oh yeah, if Oprah saw this, she would think it's amazing. Believe me, she's seen every amazing thing under the sun times a billion.
And they're stalking her. Right.
All the time. So you have to come at something in a way that really makes sense. Same question I get about how'd you meet Richard Branson. If in my particular case with Oprah, to really answer the question, it's either going to be something that she cannot do on her own without some sort of help, that I need to do the detective work and figure out how can I lead her to some opportunity, something that would be valuable and important to her, that because of me and my efforts or whatever I can facilitate would make her say, yes, I want that, or I want to meet the person. The other is there some foundation? Is there some cause? Is there something that I literally would spend money to either pay money, facilitate something? So there are all kinds of ways to do that. But most people can apply this in such doable ways. I mean, Oprah's a tough one, but to answer the question, if I was going to go after her, it is very strategic. Most people are way easier to get to. There's no one that I have ever really wanted to meet that is alive that I have not been able to get to yet.
Mike, I don't think that the audience necessarily knows like what that means for Joe to say that. He's not necessarily a household name, but there are thousands of entrepreneurs with tens to hundreds of millions of dollars of wealth that Joe has meaningfully influenced, including me. And so there are massive people who, quote, owe him a favor, but I don't think any of them actually view it like that. They're like, Joe's the guy who helped me no matter what, regardless of who I was, no matter where I was in my career, and he just did it. Right, without expecting something back. And maybe you joined Genius, or maybe you didn't, but you just do it because you just walk around helping people. So for you to say, I can't get a hold of this person, or that I have to approach it strategically, that's different than if it's someone's fresh out of school, they're just building a reputation, they're going to have a harder time. But when you're saying you, even at your level of being, 20 years of helping people connect the way you have, you're still saying like, these are people who are kind of, the white whale kind of, Moby Dick idea, and saying, all right, so for this person, it's a strategic, how do I help? Is there ever a time where you don't go, how do I help first?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if someone, if you're in a life or death situation where, my friend Ken Glickman said, if you were on the Titanic, so metaphorically think about this. If you're on the Titanic's going down, you have 100 of your best friends on it. You've got 3 life preservers. It's going down. Whoever doesn't get a life preserver, they're all in the water. They're floating. They're going to die within a minute. They're going to freeze to death if they don't get a life jacket, a life preserver.
Because they keep you warm.
No, just to get them not.
It's about snuggling. It's a snuggle party.
Let's do an interview on connecting while Dave heckles me at the same time. So you, in that minute, you learn the difference between important and most important, right? So there are some life or death situations where, you're not going to have time to, what's my agenda? There are some opportunities, you better snap at them. You better ask the question. You can get all Wayne Gretzky here and you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Yeah. Sometimes you meet a person, you see an opportunity, you better jump on it. So a lot of it simply requires asking. A lot of it requires courage. And anytime you can position yourself to not come across as a jackass or come across as just some opportunist that only cares about themselves, which is why a lot of people have trouble connecting, is they just are so focused on what they want, it doesn't occur to them, what does the other person want? So my whole thing is, what's in it for them? Why should Oprah or anyone care about me unless I show up with something or a reason that should make them care? Mm-hmm. My opportunities are important to me. The way that I see the world is important to me, but that doesn't mean anyone should care about what is important to me. Right, right. Because especially if they don't know me, I'm not some household name. As a matter of fact, I have sort of love-hate relationships with getting famous because I know a lot of famous people. I work with a lot of famous people, and a lot of it, no one knows that I work with these famous people because a lot of that work is done in the addiction and recovery world. So, I've met world leaders, and part of what has helped me connect, believe it or not, is the fact that I've been in such desperate, lost places in my own addiction recovery that I was at a place where I couldn't offer anything. I was just trying to survive and function physically, mentally, spiritually. And when I got recovery and I started meeting famous people, I started realizing that no matter who you are, there may be an area of your life where you're completely broken, where you're completely lost. And so the facade of this person is so special goes away when you're sitting with a billionaire, or you're sitting with a famous athlete, or a famous musician, or a famous politician, or clergy that leads, that leads people, that has an area of their life where they're completely not only messed up, but they are doing things that are perceived publicly as bad, and they're hurting themselves, and sometimes they're hurting other people. It gives you a whole different perspective of humanity. And I mean, that's what helps me connect, is the ability to identify suffering in other people and say, where does that suffering, how can you remove it? How can you reduce suffering? And I think if you have that empathy, like you mentioned, that opens you up. And people that don't have that, I think they're fake, and some people don't have it. They're just not wired to care about others. That's where we get into extreme narcissism, sociopaths, psychopaths. That's a whole nother conversation.
How do you filter those people out of Genius Network? Because one of the reasons that I go, this is like the first networking group that I joined, and the one I go to every year, and you generally filter out the douchebags and those people. What's the process for spotting the assholes so that they don't get past the gates?
Well, I have a little bit of an advantage at this point, is I have so many friends now in these sort of different industries.
Oh yeah, the reputation cycle. And
totally, yeah. And it has taken, I started Genius Network in 2006. So there's been a period of time where I think the curation of these people keeps getting better and better and better. There's no perfect system, and people that are, they're really good at hiding it. You don't notice it right away. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to think that I have a good filter. One of my criteria, though, is how are people that are more powerful treat people that are less powerful than them. I think that's always a great criteria. Not only does that open you up to see a lot of things, but it's also, who do you want to have as your true friends? Who do you want to have in your inner circle? So the people that become friends of mine how are people that are real powerful, real influential, treat people like that are servers? How do they say thank you when someone opens the door for them? And you can really find that out just by witnessing them, observing them. And we also have these wonderful ways online where you can just do background searches on people. And you can, and I'll tell you, some people, I'm not joking when I say this. I have a friend who's one of his dear friends owns one of the largest online dating sites in the world. Well, probably the most famous one. People can guess which one that is. And before this person when he's been single, has gone out on dates, does a background search on the person, criminal background. There are little things that you can actually do and employ that don't cost a lot of money, that are just smart business that a lot of people overlook doing. Yeah.
What percentage of people each year do you have to kick out? Do you kick out past your filter?
We've only had to kick out in the entire time I've had Genius Network, maybe, I'm trying to think, that paid money and then we gave them money back, or before they came to their first meeting. I think it was like 3. There's been dozens and dozens of applications that we've just rejected before they even get in there. The key is to not have to give them their money back. The key is don't let them into the house.
So your detection system is very nuanced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and it's not perfect. It's not perfect. I had a person in my 100K group that I literally, after he was there, this was last year, after he was there the entire year, this guy was, is the first time I literally have yelled at somebody that is a client in a decade. I literally yelled at him.
These are people who write you a check for $100,000 to work with you in a small group of elite entrepreneurs.
Yes.
So, and you yelled at one of these guys?
Not publicly, but in a meeting. Yeah. And he had not only attended all the meetings, but he was coming to the regular Genius Network meetings, which someone in 100K is able to do. And he was such a user and such a taker and so manipulative. And I had spoken to several other people that he had worked with just to make sure my reading of this guy was not off. Gave him every opportunity under the sun, was very helpful, and the guy was just a total leech. And I literally yelled at him, and he wanted to stay in the group. And I said, no, you couldn't even pay me $1 million to stay in this group at this point. You don't deserve this group. You're a user, you're a taker, and I gave him his money back. And he didn't want his money back. He wanted to stay in the group, but that would, for one, I want people that are easy, lucrative, and fun. I don't want people that are hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating, or hard, annoying, lucrative, and frustrating. This guy was a total half person. This person was a parasite. And I also understand that hurt people hurt others. That certain things happen to this guy at some point in time that causes people to become the way they are. However, I'll leave my charity work and the stuff that I do for my recovery work. In my business, though, it's very, and sometimes it crosses over.
So clear boundaries are part of this.
Yeah. And look, I'm always trying to improve my boundaries. Like we all have, we all can rationalize and justify and, that sort of thing. But
all right. So I'm going to get back to one of the other statements, because I think this will lead to some of your mental processes. And again, the kind of the structurally what I'm looking for here is how you organize people in your mind. So you've somehow figured out a way to build a very complex web, a relationship map. Is that something you developed, or you think you've got an innate ability to do it? And I'll give you some specific examples. So just keeping people straight in your head, and then deciding how to structure relationships. Like, when is the right time that you feel comfortable introducing someone to someone else? And you're like, and here's what you're going to say. So you push them in a specific velocity or direction. Talk a little bit about how emotionally, spiritually, energetically, and logically that works.
Well, the desire to want to do it comes from the fact that I grew up very shy, very introverted, lonely, needing and wanting and desiring attention and wanting people to like me. So someone could say, oh, well, it's because of the insecurity and the self-esteem or whatever, and that's what, in a lot of ways it did lead to it, right? I mean, why do I connect others? Probably because I like connection myself, because it makes me feel good if I'm able to do that. It was awkward in the beginning. When I was in high school, I literally could not go and talk to people. I was deathly afraid of it. When I was, my mother died when I was 4. My father never remarried. I never heard "I love you" from parents until I was much older from my father, who was tormented and a broken person when my mother passed away. So I didn't have a very good childhood, which it sucked. I mean, it was bad. What it did, though, is it left a big open hole that I wanted to fill through connection. So I was such a disconnected child and didn't get much connection and didn't get much love. And so, and if I did get it, I didn't feel it. I didn't know what that felt like. So I had to work really hard as an adult to try to make up for what I felt. And so I was always that kid that if I saw someone eating lunch by themselves, I would try to talk to them. If I saw kids picking on someone, I would try to intercept, even though I didn't have the physical strength or posturing. I would still try unless I was afraid I was going to get beat up. I also, if there were fights going on, I would want to break them up. I didn't like seeing people hurt. And so feeling hurt led in a lot of ways to, not wanting to see other people that way. So that was sort of the setup. So if there is a strategy, part of it is I don't really think about it too much. My whole thing is like, when someone says I need this or I need that, my brain immediately goes to, how could I help this person? What could this person read, watch, see, talk to? And before I talk myself out of it, I take a really quick action in order to do that. So for instance, if someone says I need this, and I can think of a book or I can think of an audio, and it's cool today, because back in the day when we're doing an interview right now,
right.
We used to charge money for people to listen to conversations. Now we call them podcasts. Now we put them on YouTube, whatever. But I would just try to deliver information to people. Now, when it comes to connecting someone, you need to be a little more discerning, because you may have someone that can meet. But I've just gotten quick at it. And if you have to call yourself a connector or you have to call yourself an influencer, you probably aren't an influencer and you're probably not a very good connector. So there's certain,
Are you saying that super connectors happen because people have super traumatized and lonely childhoods?
No. I can't tell if this is a joke or not. So,
I was actually I was thinking about bridging, so I'm glad you're going there, because obviously the experience developed an enormous amount. That's something that's become very obvious in all this dialogue is Joe operates from a place of extreme compassion, empathy, from a place of hurt and pain. But now that he's developed this skill, this muscle, It's, it appears to be effortless and very, very natural.
It's abnormal though. Like very few humans can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think most of our very successful financially, and that's only one way that you can gauge success, because there's a lot of people that have tons of money and live in prisons with golden bars, and there's other people that don't make money at all that are wonderful, lovely, happy, connected human beings. And so the people I know that have created enormous wealth, most of them, that has not all of them, because many of them had incredibly functional, supportive environments, and they just had capabilities built into them. There was not entitlement built in. They're caring. They do good stuff. The vast majority, though, a lot of it is driven by pain. They were just trying to escape some sort of stuff. So it's not the trauma. Right now we're living, I believe addiction is a response to trauma, but I also have to be careful because so many people speak in woundology. I was traumatized, I this and that, and so therefore I'm all screwed up. And so there's this pendulum of there's real hurt and there's real pain and there's stuff that happened, but it's what you did with it. Because if you think about your own lives, you've both had crazy stuff that has happened with you. It's not the crazy thing that happened to you. It's what you did with it. You're either winning or you're learning, right? And so when you have those things, you can either be disabled by those things or you can learn from them. And when you have learned how to overcome obstacles, or you've learned business strategies, or you've learned all kinds of stuff, you used to weigh 300 pounds, and you learned all these capabilities, well, you also can, if you're pretty aware and you analyze sort of humanity in your life, that's like, oh, I got out of this trap. This getting out of this trap would be useful to someone that's in that trap, walking into that trap and helping them not only how to avoid it, but if they've fallen into the trap, how to get them out, right? All of us have things. I mean, if you think of the name of what this is, the capability amplifier. Okay, what does that actually mean? There's a lot of different ways to interpret it. So I may happen to have the capabilities of connecting with people. So I wanted to give some background on where did it come from, and how do you do it? I mean, sometimes it's literally, because what is connection? What does connection mean? It's like you can connect someone with another person by, here, talk to this person, watch this thing, read this book, or you can literally, take it upon yourself to go and insert yourself into their life if it's some sort of intervention, or you can, let them figure. You don't want to take away the gift of someone's struggles. Some people have to go. A lot of parents, they don't want their kids to ever hurt. They don't want them to go through any struggle. But if you look in your life, most of the things that were breakthroughs did not come out of things working. They came out of things that...
When you didn't get the trophy.
Yeah, when you didn't get a lot of stuff. And that's most progress comes from having to swim against the stream. It has to come a lot of times through hurt, through brokenness, through pain, through grief. And in the 1800s and beyond, every child, for the most part, was probably physically abused, most sexually, horrible conditions of living compared to what we would consider horrible, yeah. Right? Today, it's like a constant drip, though. Like the trauma is the constant connection to the internet, the continual stress and the overwhelm of options. Modern life is way different than it was before, but it's how severe it is, and it's how you cope with it, after the fact. So I look at to me, and Dan Sullivan's been very helpful in this, is that most things in life come out of areas that don't work. So I don't wake up expecting life to work. I actually wake up expecting things to not work, expecting things to go bad, and knowing that every bad thing that's happening is raw material in order to do something about it. Now, when I say bad things, I don't want bombs going off. I don't want to be in, broken bones. I mean, I'm just talking about, oh, shit, I had this anticipation and expectation that maybe this thing that I'm selling, this sales letter would work, or this sort of relationship would work, or, not getting my heart broken. But those things happen all the time, but until you've had your heart ripped out of your chest, how do you know how to deal with heartbreak, and going through that grief? And so I think that if people just increased 5% their compassion, their caring, or in some ways, being a little bit more hardcore. A lot of people are so giving and so helpful that they just get taken. If I could teach people anything that I've learned now, is I wasn't as discerning with certain people in the past that I wish I would have been. Because in my ability to be helpful and be connecting, I've connected people with things that they didn't give a rat's ass about, me and other people, and I didn't know it at the time. And so looking at it now, I want people to work to earn a certain level of respect just before I hand over the keys to the kingdom, whatever.
Well, go ahead, Dave. I know you're itching to ask something.
Sorry, Mike. I don't want to step in on your question there, but I know we talked ahead of time about like the one question I've been itching to ask. Because I could call Joe anytime, but I never thought to ask this until you're like, Dave, like let's pick his brain. So I'm not a super connector. But I like to help people. I like to think I like to help them as much as you like to help people, and as much as Mike likes to help people. And I've often caught myself feeling almost a little bit guilty, like, I wish I would have thought to hook this person A up with person B, or even that I remember that it was person A who introduced me to person B, who got me through to person C, that really like transformed things. And it feels to me like you have this incredible spider web of maps of all these connections. Like, I met this guy in 2005 and he was wearing a green sweater. Like, do you have an abnormal brain, or do you have like a Salesforce account or some some sort of tool set you use? Like how can we be a better connector using your data model?
Well, I remember quotes and dirty jokes far better than if you asked me to describe a movie I went to last night. So I have a weird brain like that. Okay. I also can track hundreds of people in my mind. When I do take people's contacts, for instance, I have an iPhone. And if I'm meeting someone, I will, as simple as this is, if I need their contact info, I will open up a contact. I will hand them my phone and say, can you give me your contact information? If they don't want to give me a phone number, if they don't want to, whatever, but almost everyone does, because in this particular case, I'm kind of a big deal. I'm totally kidding. No, so
well, you represent value, so and that's something about, but getting past that hump, that is a very real thing. But keep going.
No, it's a real simple thing. So how do you actually get someone's contact information just so you have it?
You store it and put it in context. So a year later, like, oh yeah, this is just not some contact. It's my phone. I don't know why.
No, so what I do is I will then put notes in the contacts. So I can track where, and I will think of where am I meeting them. Like here in Alaska, if there's something that happens here, I will use a combination of, if you just want to know the tools that I'm currently using. Although don't think it's about the tool. It's about how you use the tool. There's a million tools. So I will put, like, if it's a to-do or follow-up, I'll put it in Asana, right? If it's something that requires any of my team or someone else to follow up with, I will text them or I will email them. I use Evernote to keep track of certain things.
What goes in Asana is just the action items.
Yes.
Okay, and what goes in Evernote?
Just anything that I want to store. Like, for instance, if I met someone here by the name of John, and I wanted to take, and I'm saying that just because there's a guy sitting across here named John.
Would you hashtag it douchebag or no?
Well,
ow.
By the way, this is
I wouldn't use a hashtag. I would use more parentheses.
This is part of Dave and Joe's version of love is by insults. It's very 8-year-old. Okay, keep going.
If people want to understand that, what's that Clint Eastwood movie, Gran Torino?
Yeah.
Okay, this woman, like, years ago,
We will emerge from this rabbit hole. But
no. It's actually a good point. I was like making fun of one of my friends on stage. It was Eben Pagan. Oh, yeah. And so Eben Pagan was interviewing me about how do you develop relationships. He's some goofball that did online dating and all kinds of stuff. No, he's a brilliant guy, really great guy. Married to Annie Lala, who's just brilliant love coach. And so we were like bantering with each other, and a woman in the audience said, why do guys do that? Why do guys diss on it? I don't understand it. My girlfriends, we never do that. We don't sit around and insult each other. And I said, you ever seen the movie Gran Torino? And she's like, no. I go, well, go watch it, because there's a part where they're in a barber shop and there's this Asian guy, and I know you're not supposed to say that word, right? And now if you watch the movie, it'll give you context.
Yeah.
And so they're just totally bashing on it. I'm like, that's how men develop bonding. Okay?
Yeah, we should talk.
Yeah, and I said it more articulately than I'm going to take the time right now to do it. But afterwards she goes, "Thank you for saying that. I never understood it. I just thought they were just trying to be mean to each other. And sometimes they are though. There's levels of cruelty. So go back to the question I didn't answer. What was it?
Well, it really comes down to managing the web. So what you're talking about is you put some notes in Evernote, and you're saying, for example, there's this guy named John, and let's say we're in Alaska, and this guy named John, who there's actually a guy named John on the other side of the camera right now.
So I will physically handwrite things because technology and tech, I can lose track of it. And I'm not a very organized person, like at all. What I do though is I measure twice and cut once, so as best I can. So I will make a contact, I will put information about it in there, and I will also snap a picture of that contact, and I will put it into Evernote titled Alaska. And then everything...
Take a picture of his face?
No, the contact card that I would make, and anything related. So we had an exercise here because this is a trip that I organized, right? And it actually started with this guy, John. And the reason I say John is because we actually know each other, of course. He's sitting on the other side of where this camera is. Yeah. And it was because of him that we actually came to this trip. I first found out about this place because of this individual who's awesome. And so if I was getting his contact info, I would keep track of it in a couple different places just to increase my ability to not forget. Because it's one thing about meeting people. See, everyone wants access and connections, but what do you do with it after the fact? I can't tell you how many people are right there. They get so close to meeting someone, but then they don't follow up with it. So what do you do with, how do you nurture relationships? Having a seed is useful only to the degree that you plant it, you water it, and you grow it, and you harvest it. And most people don't harvest relationships. They're very,
So will you have
exactly?
We have got lovely. Maybe we'll put that in the show notes because John just showed us a fantastic representative. One of his favorite birds was he drew a favorite bird.
What's funny is this is a guy that sold his company for $500 million, right? No, I'm not kidding. I mean, this is a very successful entrepreneur. And it also goes to show, like, the truth is,
he's a naughty boy.
All guys are, they're just...
they're naughty.
They're just little kids that as they get older and make money, they need to act like they're like mature.
Or back to 8.
Yeah.
But this does go to, so you meet, you create a connection. Do you have, so what you do is you think of how can I create some momentum, create a further connection, or maybe you have a specific outcome in mind, and how am I going to cultivate that, and as you say, build that relationship. So let's talk a little bit about relationship cultivation, building rapport that may or may not lead to something. So even if you know and have a specific outcome in mind, you might take a little time to gestate, think about it, develop it, get past the sniff test. But how do you develop that continued rapport, those deeper connections? What's some of the things that pop into your head?
Well, stay in touch with people. And what I mean by stay in touch with them is drip on them. Send them books, say hello, keep track of their birthdays.
Tell us a story of someone recent. Again, think through the lens of a high value individual that you recently met and you knew there was a possibility or potential for something to evolve or develop. You didn't know what it was. So can you tell us a story about someone real?
Okay, well, let's take recently. Okay, and another person sitting behind here is a guy by the name of Devane Patel. Devane is a really successful financial advisor, owns a bunch of different franchises, really great guy. And he actually...
I don't think he's that great. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I have a better reason to think he's great because he funded a movie on me and you did not. So from that standpoint...
And that's why I'm not staying at the big house with my son. No.
God. See, the reason I brought up Devane, though, first off, Devane funded a movie on my life anonymously, and then we found out that it was him, and so I have enormous gratitude. So I love reciprocity. Okay, you can use reciprocity to manipulate people in ways, or you can actually just be a reciprocal human that likes just doing things for people, not because you have an agenda and something must come out of it, but it actually feels good to help people. That which is not earned is seldom valued, right? So if you just were born with a great physique and you never had to exercise or work out or have any sort of like way of eating that required some level of, I don't know if discipline is the right word, but rituals. We appreciate what we earn. And when you've built a business through effort and through ingenuity and resourcefulness, it feels better than if someone just gave you a bunch of money, right? I mean, we already can see what happens with people that win the lottery. 2 years later, statistically, they are in deeper debt than they were before they won the lottery, with a heck of a lot more personal problems. Well, I think life operates that way. Anyway, so the reason I brought up Devane is because the example I'm going to use is about 4 weeks ago from this date and time, I had my documentary that Devane, created with Nick Nanton, who's also on this trip. It was at the Chinese theater.
It used to be called the Man Chinese Theater, right downtown, where all the stars are in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Great place.
So Chris Voss, who I don't know super well, but Chris Voss wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. And so he's considered the top
CIA,
FBI hostage
FBI,
negotiator. There's he's considered the top one. And he has probably the best-selling negotiation book in the world. Like, this guy's a master at negotiation. And I had him come to Genius Network last year, and I interviewed him. And it was really great. But he's not a member. He didn't join Genius Network. He's just someone that has become a friend. And I reached out to him because he was in, he lives in L.A. And so he actually came to my documentary. Then afterwards, he took me to Soho House with a couple of other people in L.A., and we were just talking. And I'm talking to him about, I want to learn from this guy, right? He has just mad skills with negotiation in an environment that I could not even fathom, right? Yeah. And so part of it is, it started with me introducing him to Sean Stevenson, who he'd met before at Genius Network, but Sean really loved his work. And so I'm with Sean, and Sean's going, this guy, Chris is his work is so amazing. I'm like, let's record a video and send that to him. So I sent that video to Chris and just said, hey, Chris, if you want me to connect you to Sean, let me know. Well, I sent him the video first, just to Chris, and then he responded back, I really love that guy. Thank you, and I'm happy to, be connected to him. So I connected to. Now, this is before I invited him to my movie. Now, this was not let me strategically plan how to drip on him with that video and then try to get something from him. I mean, this guy can smoke out almost anyone that has an agenda, right? He's probably one of the world's masters at it. But I genuinely just liked connecting Sean with him because Sean liked his work and I happened to know him and I had a way to contact him. So I sent it. Then I connect both of them. They totally hit it off. I invite him to come see them. He does. We go to dinner. And then right before I came on this trip, the day before, I do an hour call with him about ways to go through selling techniques. And then I have another call set up with him 2 days after I get back from this trip, all facilitated by wanting to connect him and connecting someone. I do that all the time. Everybody can do that sort of stuff. I hope the way I explained it
that's pretty good.
Makes it easy enough for people to reverse engineer what I just said.
Yeah,
but
I think I'm gonna repeat what I heard, and I know Dave's got a little commentary. So first of all, what I'll tell you is I just was dialoguing with Sean maybe 4 days ago, and he said Chris Voss and his work has just changed my life. I'm really into him. He didn't say specifically you connected him, but now obviously I've heard the story. If I deconstruct this a little bit, so you meet someone. You put them in your database, and then what you have, and I'm the recipient of this as well, which is you'll start inviting them to do little things. So if you're in town, you'll say, hey, by the way, I've got something going on here that you might find valuable without an agenda behind it. So it's sort of like an opportunity, but there's got to be a pond of recency here. And I know one thing about...
Well, let me say this. Yeah. When I was going to LA because of the movie, every time I meet someone to make a contact, I try to get their physical mailing address because I like mailing them cards and postcards and books. And whenever I was going to LA or Hollywood, I type in the city. Every single person that I have in my contact pops up. Whenever I go somewhere, I can then scroll through and say, who do I know here?
In Apple contacts?
Yeah, or in anything. You could use Outlook. You could be on an Android. It doesn't matter. Whatever.
In Apple contacts?
You can use Evernote.
Okay.
I mean, you can, with any phone, I mean, even if you kept something like notes, and this is a person, here's the city they lived in, you can do this sort of stuff. Let me say this too, and we'll come back to it. The 5% of people that are the most successful in the world in their categories are willing to do the things that the 95% are not willing to do. The reason he's like an industry transformer. I mean, in his category, he's probably the number one guy in the world in his category in terms of personality, in terms of like what he has facilitated happening. It's because Dave is willing to do the things that the other 95% are not willing to do. Same thing in your world, same thing in anyone. So if you want to get better at relationship building, you just can't, well, let me just go along and see if I float into success. Let me just, the relationship fairy is going to just drop relationships, so the money fairy is going to ship money all over us. I mean, it doesn't work that way. There are certain things that you put certain levels of work into it. And one example, and then we'll go back. I know this is a total tangent. For 6 years now, all of my Facebook friends, I don't even like Facebook that much, right? I have a love-hate relationship with social media. For the last 6 years, everyone on my friend list, and there are some days I miss because I'm on free days or whatever, I personally, me, not someone on my team, goes to people that are friends of mine or follow me, some I don't even know, and I wish them a happy birthday. I put a happy birthday link. It's usually me with a famous person, and I will just click the link and it says happy birthday. And yes, I mean, they're seeing a video that I'm sending to other people and stuff, but it includes a video. It's a famous person. And they love it. And some of these people are like, I look forward to your birthday message. Most people would not spend 6 years, and I'm a busy guy. And that takes 5 to 10 minutes every single day. And you could argue that's a stupid use of my time. I could totally automate it, but there's something about it that just keeps me connected and say, you know what? There's a lot of people that listen to my podcast and they follow me. And I would have loved it if someone that I read their books and listened to their stuff would have done that for me. It would have made me feel really good. And every day, no matter what happens, there's a few dozen people that just feel really good because I do that. And I don't dialogue with them. I don't even read the messages on Messenger because I can't do that. But I can drip a little on these individuals. And then I've built into my database every single person that are clients that we have birthdays for, we send them an automated happy birthday. If you're Jehovah's Witness, this is probably not going to work, right? There's certain things they don't celebrate birthdays. However, and that's not I'm not trying to
track the religion of all of your friends?
No, I do not. Even though we should talk about everything that would create controversy here and how you could actually use that just so someone can attack me.
A list of pissing people off.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, one of the things that we're going to do when we're done here, I'm going to make a birthday greeting video with you three guys.
Good.
Nice. That'll be. I'm going to take action on that.
I'll tell you, everyone watching this, though, if you just took the birthday thing and you figured out how to just say happy birthday to everybody, that alone would change.
I get your Tony video thing because you did that, and I was like, God, why didn't I do that?
I've done it with
Tony.
Mm-hmm. Well, you...
I get it every year, though.
So what were you going to say, Dave? Because I've got a couple more questions, too.
What percentage of your time every day do you spend just connecting with people? What percentage of your time every day do you spend just connecting with people in this kind of almost unstructured way? Because I feel like I don't have the structure in my life to do that very effectively. And also, frankly, my calendar's all booked up. So I'm like...
I don't even think about it that way because this is kind of what I do. It's sort of like asking a fish, how much time do you spend, just swimming? It's like, doesn't even know it's in water. You take a fish, it doesn't know what water is. So
you catch it like you did today.
It's not the same thing. It's
we didn't talk about the 44-pound king salmon that you caught on this trip.
But here's the thing: you just throw a hook in the line. And here's the thing, though. Here I am feeling sorry for fish. Right, I'm probably the most. No, I was with you when the first fish came up and they whacked it on the head last year, and Joe was freaking out because I was on the boat with you. If you're going to catch a fish, put it out of its misery or whatever you're going to do. And I also, you said something really funny yesterday because you caught a fish,
lingcod,
that had a salmon inside of it. And you then shoot this funny video saying, for all of you out there that think the animal kingdom is not cruel, look at, and he makes highlight of how this other fish is just eating a whole nother fish whole.
And it was all of these salmon inside the belly of this thing. It was,
yeah. Nature's so weird. Life is just weird. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're monkeys that drive cars, and we're talking about how to connect them all right now. So, all right, what was the question?
Well, it was actually...
percentage of time. So it depends on the day. There is no set... I do not have any set schedule.
Time and energy.
Hours.
So 10% of your time. Average it out over a month. Per month goes to connecting. 20%.
Well, I run Genius Network,
of
so
your
Genius
time,
Network is a
you're
connection
wasting
network.
hours
So I'm in a unique
20%?
situation, and I spend about 50% of my time helping people and doing things in addiction recovery, which I make zero money off of, that I don't do for money. But here's the thing though. Life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. And you can be a producer or you can be a parasite. And the more that as weird as it sounds, if you want to get anything done, ask a busy person to do it, right? Okay, because people that aren't busy, they probably ain't get much shit done. And people that are super busy, even to the point of overwhelm, but they produce, you can probably count on them if you have enough rapport. So part of my thing is not just connecting, part of it is keeping the bond as strong as one can, because it's one thing about connecting, it's another thing about how do you go deep with it versus going shallow. Most people are super shallow in the way that they market, in the way that they do relationships. I mean, in a lot of ways, your brand did not come from the fact that you sell coffee. Okay, it came from education-based marketing, it came from bonding people, it came from a whole myriad of bizarre things that you do. And when I say bizarre, normal to you, right? Yeah. But bizarre to many people. And you introduce people into new, unique ways of thinking. So what you do, and again, I'll have to credit Dan Sullivan, who's brilliant, because I spend a lot of time with Dan.
I've trained with him too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're all friends with Dan. And Dan says, when you want to give people direction, confidence, capability, and clarity, right? And so in our own ways, he does that with Strategic Coach. I do that with Genius Network. We all give people direction, confidence, capability, and clarity, and you package it in ways so it's new, better, and different. And so if you think about what is it, do you sell coffee? Yeah, you do sell coffee, of course. But do people really want coffee? They want the results of what that's going to do.
They want feel after they drink it.
Right. And there's people that would argue with you that coffee's not a good thing. Grass-fed butter, but you have all of this knowledge base.
For those people.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, like if you want to make an impact in the world, you can't be vanilla. You're going to take a stand. And you have to, when it comes to what are you willing to stand for? What are you willing to die for? What are you willing to put? Now, if you are an idiot, if you haven't done research, if you don't know what you're talking about, and you try to go out and act like you're Dave Asprey or Gary Vaynerchuk or someone that has a strong personality, but you don't have the chops or the knowledge in order to back it up, you're going to lose some of these battles that you get into. But if you can really learn about something and you can really, here's the best way though to be to be a leader is to be a byproduct of your own advice. Be a result of your own
being
system.
Congruent.
Be a convert of your own system. I mean, I didn't go into the marketing business because I just felt, I should start teaching people marketing. It was a strategic byproduct of being a dead broke carpet cleaner, living off credit cards. I had to learn marketing because I needed to eat. I needed to survive. I got really good at it. I turned the company around and I was like, wow, I wonder if other people that were in the same boat as me. So when I first started selling training to people, I was selling it to professional carpet and upholstery cleaners back in 1992. And what went through my head was, what could I offer and teach and sell that could save people from going through the misery that I went through in my own business? And that's really what went through my head. And it was about, how do I keep people from struggling in the same way that I did, and would they pay me for it? And how do I learn how to do it? And I think that's just a great framework. So I take that into relationship building. I don't think it's any different in selling, because what is selling? Let's quote Dan Sullivan again. When I asked him, what's your definition of selling? Years ago, he blurted out, getting someone intellectually engaged in a future result that's good for them, keyword good for them, and get them to emotionally commit to take action to achieve that result. So every person has this future result in mind. So I want to meet this person because that person represents access to me. That person represents an opportunity for me. That person. So it's like, okay, well, how do you get someone intellectually and emotionally engaged in a future result with you and get them to commit to take action to achieve that result? So selling in that context, which is persuasion, which could be called influence, it's no different from connecting or selling a product or service. I mean, you're doing this podcast or this video or whatever you want to call this conversation, And you're hoping that you're going to share some people some capabilities. That's why we call it a capability amplifier, because if people had the capabilities of connecting and relationship building, it would help them. That capability would help amplify their opportunities. We're all sitting here trying. So the thing is, can you either expand humans or you're going to contract. And some people are contractors and some people are expanders. And so I seek out people that can help me expand myself. I try to help expand them. And it's like helium in a balloon. It's just going to float. And other people, they just walk around with pins and they just like stab people all day long. And there's that.
Good. Did you have something to add? Because I've got another question.
No, go for it. Thanks for letting me cut in on these.
No, it's great. That's why I wanted to hear it, because you amplify me. I appreciate that. I think you add value. So this is...
Can I say something too here? Because all this rambling, which is literally because I'm like nuts and crazy. Do you notice how I acknowledge and edify people all the time?
Yes.
Now,
I actually have a very specific question about that. It wasn't my next question, but we could dive into it now.
No, the reason I want to bring it up is that, like Dave, we have been on the boat insulting each other for almost the entire time we've been here. We're on the boat together.
Appointments lined up after that day.
Exactly. It's so to try to not undermine him completely in a public forum where it's being videotaped, if I at least say nice things about him, because you can tell by his body language, he's this itchy to say something like to diss me, which is fine. But if I say he's an industry transformer, if I do all that stuff, flattery works, even if none of it is real. No, I'm kidding. Everything I've said about Dave, I totally believe. But here's the point.
Yeah.
Here's the point. Use humor. Okay, life is hard. Life is a struggle. That's why we talk shit to each other.
Right.
That we want to laugh. If you want to judge the value of a relationship, how often do they laugh together? Seriously, you want to connect with someone and you have a hard time connecting, go to clown school. I'm not joking. If there's clown school in your area, and if you live in a small town, there's probably no clown school. Take an improv class.
Is that the same as like a vegan cooking school?
It depends on if you interpret that as humorous. It could be, right? So, yeah. No, but here's the thing. People that want to become better at connecting, you got to go out and like interact with humans. It can't be staring at a screen. That ain't going to happen. So put yourself out there. I was definitely afraid, asking someone out on a date, like early in high school. Like I had no upbringing, like nothing gave me confidence. I had to literally suffer my way through it. But I realized that, look, if I don't go and engage with people, I'm not going to get anywhere in life. And so I used to do mind tricks on myself, and I'd say things like, don't look at it as rejection. Look at it as taking a survey of who has good taste and who doesn't. And a lot of those people that rejected me probably had really good taste, right? but the thing is you get better at it. Yeah. I mean, you get better at it, and you got to put yourself out there. But the whole thing is, the point of me stopping this is, even while we're doing it here, we're all friends, and we bust for a reason, because we laugh a lot, because we do try to help each other out. And there are people that are watching that think all of us in our own ways are batshit crazy and they don't like us. And that's fine, because there's a lot of people that do resonate with us and a lot of people that do like us. And so you want to build upon that.
You changed points in the middle there. Your actual point is about gratitude.
Yeah. Gratitude, fun, connect. I mean, it's
not just laughing. But
yeah.
I know this about you because we've been friends for a long time.
Yeah.
When people go out of their way to say, oh, you know what? Like I did at the beginning, I said, it was our mutual friend JJ Virgin who told me to go to Genius Network. Like that's me thanking JJ, because that was really good advice, right? But I'm acknowledging her, right? And you, every time someone acknowledges another person in your little internal database, you have a little checkbox like, oh, that's a good person because they're sharing the credit. And I've seen that about you over and over. Not necessarily when people are crediting you, but when anyone credits another person, they actually like go up a notch in your estimation of them.
Absolutely. And see, you're a great example of it. And here's one thing, I don't know if I've even said this to you, I may have, is that, so Dave has introduced me to a lot of people, and I will mention Dave, especially if it's in a public thing for someone to introduce me to, and it could be an idea, it could be a thought. He's the same way. Like I introduced him to Ariana Huffington early on in our relationship. We didn't know each other that well.
Super cool, yeah.
And right in the beginning, when you interviewed her for your podcast, you said, my friend Joe Polish introduced us right off the bat. I cannot tell you how many famous people with millions, hundreds of millions of podcast downloads that I've connected them with, all kinds of people that never would mention my name. They will only mention people that they perceive either they want something from, or they still perceive have higher status. They play the status game. And I hate that shit. I hate when people play the status game. I'm not a person that, like, I try to make myself accessible to people and never believe my own PR. One of the biggest killers of being a good connector that is real authentic is don't believe your own PR. Just because you've gotten famous, just because you've written a New York Times bestseller, just because you've hit some deal that's made you enormously wealthy, or you're an investor in some company that exploded, does not entitle you to think that you are somehow like God's gift to God.
Well, that leads me to this big question, because back to the edification, what I was going to add, and you do this in meetings, and you do it jokingly, and sometimes it's actually in a way to poke a little fun, but someone will say something and you'll turn to someone and say, so what do you think about that?
Yeah.
Part of it creates great content, but it also makes that person feel valuable and heard. And I've even though I know whether you're doing it intentionally with an agenda or not, I'll be like, wow, Joe actually cares about my opinion here. And it doesn't matter what level of wounding we're at in our trauma recovery as we go through life. Right. But that does bring me to, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. I'm going to bundle them together because they're all connected. And it's so interesting you talked about the status game also, because the question, one of them comes from, how do you stay courageous when you want to meet people that you want to know? And I have this going through my head because I still have an old identity at times of the poor kid from Minnesota who didn't have enough, didn't feel heard, didn't feel listened to, valued, blah, 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 blah. And those wounds drove me to becoming what I am, just like you told your stories as well. But having the courage to want to meet someone who has a high perceived value, and feeling and remaining courageous. So I'm just going to say, think a little bit about that, and I'm going to ask the second part of the question. The other part is, one thing that you're really good at is you know how to enter into the cool kids club. And when I say the cool kids club, historically that would be status, but it'll be like, if there's a celebrity, you have a way of accessing the celebrity, adding value, and being asked to be in the inner sanctum because you are adding value. You're making those introductions. You're making yourself useful as well. But gaining access, staying in, you've already set up the mindset you have along here, but is there anything else you can add about feeling worthy of introducing yourself and feeling as though you have the right to ask for a relationship with someone with high perceived status?
Well, I think I've done enough time of trying to put good karma out into the world at this point where I genuinely believe that I have earned it. Okay, and I do have the attitude that I'm not entitled to anything, and nothing is going to come to me without creating value first. And those are things that Dan Sullivan actually teaches, and that I've gone really deep with. Now, to answer the first question about imposter syndrome, as an example, it's one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs struggle with. Even one of the number one reasons why some people don't go to Genius Network or stay in Genius Network, from surveys and from feedback forums, is like, I don't know how to fit in. I don't feel, and it's weird because these are coming from people that I consider way more successful than even me, but they struggle with this. And so there is, even more so than my own reality can comprehend, there's a huge amount of like, I'm fake, I'm not real. And part of that has to come with not having done the work. Now, each of us here in our own ways, see, a lot of people, they remember us from the last time they interacted with us. And you have a perception in the world. Like, I've seen you grow tremendously. I mean, especially over the last 5 years. You know, you had cancer. That was a huge shift for you. I mean, I know the level of personal work, therapy, and other things that you've done. You know, Dave has 40 years of Zen. I mean, I spent a week with Dave going through a super intensive, I mean, he does stuff on a personal development basis that most people can't even comprehend in order to deal with his own pains, his own traumas, his own what he would
unwilling to face, consciously and unconsciously, for sure.
Right.
Yes.
And I have done a ton of seminars. I've done a lot of personal development because I think being better as a business owner has to do with being a better human in doing that. So one of the quick ways to get really helpful stuff if you struggle with I don't deserve or don't belong in this club is there's a book written by my friend Todd Herman called The Alter Ego Effect. Yeah. Okay. And the premise of it is that you can either go through years of therapy or you can adopt an alter ego, which is different than fake it till you make it. It's a way of saying, okay, there's a lot of athletes, there's a lot of people that he shows examples of, from Beyonce to, different to Bo Jackson, the athlete, that were able to perform because they adopted like an alter ego. How would this person that I look up to, how would this superhero, if I was Batman or if I was Wonder Woman, as an example, there's lots of, and he goes through a whole process, but that's actually a great way to adopt something. Some people, though, they take it to, I shouldn't say extremes, because the way Todd does it is in a way that will make you better as a performer, as a person, and to get through this. Some people, that have not like read that book, they actually have these personas that are terrible as humans. And I think if you're not being a very good human, you could actually say, what would a really good human be if I was a really good human? And you can live into that. Yeah. I mean, you said courage. Here's the thing with courage. Nothing feels good in the middle. If you're in the middle of a hardcore workout and it's an hour long and you're 30 minutes in, it doesn't feel good. It's not like, oh, I love this. This is so exciting. And I'm just grueling through a marathon.
Here's the big follow-up question, or maybe it's more of a comment, but I remember this thing that Mr. Rogers once said. And he said, when he would like see something really scary, like a disaster, an earthquake or a fire or something, his mom taught him to look for the helpers. So instead of seeing all the disaster, to see like the policemen and the firemen coming in to help people. And I used to have the confidence things like that, the imposter syndrome, like, what the heck am I doing here, especially earlier in my career. But what I figured out, which wasn't something that I learned growing up, is that it actually, it feels good to help other people and that people actually want to help you. And this wasn't in my worldview. And it really resonated with what you were saying there. And one of the ways to build confidence, if you feel like you don't fit in at Genius Network, or you're not good enough to talk to the celebrity, is actually go help someone else. And magically, that act of service helps you feel more of that worth, which then gives you the confidence to go do the thing that you really could have done in the first place.
That is exactly it. No, I mean, by you being that way and by someone adopting that sort of belief and living into it, doing the things that create that, you become that. If someone wants to get in better physical shape, if they start thinking of themselves as an athlete other than someone that just has to go exercise, you interact with that activity in a much different way. And so if you start thinking of yourself as being someone that serves and helps others, then all of a sudden you start developing the identity of a helper. Yeah. And so I think, you think about what is your behavior doing? What is the identity that you have? What are the rituals and what are the habits and what are the behaviors that are going to cause that to be a real thing for you? Be it a connector, or be it a great musician, or be it a great parent, or being a great sponsor in a 12-step program.
It's very good. So I have one other thing before we wrap this up, and that is we've got some books here, and I'm going to just insert this, which is Joe's book, The Average Joe's Marketing Book by Joe Polish. So
Not even out yet.
It isn't.
No, it's a pre-release copy.
Okay.
I read a pre-release copy last year. Why isn't this out?
Yeah, because I've been working on a big distribution deal, so we have not publicly made it. But
it's
it will be.
Book.
But someone can go to joesmarketingbook.com and read the first chapter.
Well, here's what I'm going to do. Is there any way I can get some copies to reward people if I...
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do.
My addiction recovery book. But that's
okay, Miracle Morning for Addiction Recovery. That's Hal Elrod and Joe Polish book as well. And Anna David, who I'm actually interviewing. She's coming to the studio. She's beautiful. And what I want to do is for you, I'm going to do this for the first 10 people. So I'll buy 10 copies of the books. If you head over when you head over to iTunes and just post a rating and a review about this episode and the podcast, first 10 people, I'm going to send you a copy of the physical book. And also make sure that folks head on over to, where should I send people over to?
I mean, joepolish.com has everything related to my recovery stuff, to my podcast, to my Genius Network. Everything's my name, like nail polish, Joe Polish.
So don't go to joepolish.com because that's a different guy.
No, they could. It's spelled the same way.
You fell for that one, sucker.
Yeah.
And then for you,
Never
Dave,
heard that before. No.
where should we send people to for you, Dave?
joepolish.com.
He's got a redirect. It's
I would say go to the Bulletproof Radio podcast
and subscribe.
On iTunes is awesome, or bulletproof.com has all the cool Bulletproof goodness.
great. So for you, Joe, any other last minute? Because we ended up doing a lot more psychology than I anticipated, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time in tactics, but the tactics emerged. There is one other thing that I'll add, because as I listen to you talk about your how you introduce people, I wrote a book a while ago called Money Phone, and it's really it is a strategy for how you use your phone to engage and interact with people. I created like multi-step messaging to engage with people, and I'll make sure that in the show notes you can get a free copy of that book also, because I think it'll help folks who want to do this. But is there anything you want to add in terms of mindset, strategies, tactics, or a summary?
Yeah, if someone goes into Google or wherever you can find a search engine and type in magic rapport formula, my name, usually it just pops up, magic rapport formula. There's articles, there's all kinds of things where I've actually spoken specifically to the subject of how do you connect with people. Most people want to know, how do you meet famous people, how do you develop relationships, how do you build groups, like I've built all that. Magic rapport formula, I got the term from a woman who interviewed me years ago, over a decade ago, named Fabian Fredrickson.
Oh yeah, I remember her.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so she gave it the name Magic Rapport Formula after she interviewed me about what it is that I do. And she has this great way of putting names to what it is that I actually was doing. And it just made sense. So I've done episodes just on that particular thing. And then the quote I'll leave everyone with is, when I was in my early 20s, someone said to me, I heard the quote, "Be nice to the people you meet on the way up. They're the same people you meet on the way down." And I've always tried to live my life that way. We were talking earlier about different types of relationships, always don't engage in relationships with dishonest, negative, and lazy people. Lay down with dogs, wake up with fleas. Who you hang out with, what you put into your head, what you put into your body. There are consequences for everything. So, don't shortchange yourself. Don't shortchange others. You will run into the same people, especially if you're a young person, 10, 20, 30 years from now. I promise you, if you leave scorched earth, if you try to screw someone, it will come back to you. You may become wealthy, you may become rich in those sort of ways, but you will become an empty human being, and there's zero reason to run around the world putting shit out into the world, because it's just going to come right back in your face, and it may take 20 years for that to happen. But, everything you put out there, you plant the seeds, what you grow. Grow good stuff. Don't be an asshole. Be a good human.
Business karma is real.
And Dave, how about you? You've been both an observer and participant here. Any last-minute observations or reflections? The fireplace wanted to say something there. We had a fire fart.
What your mother said a long time ago, if you don't have something nice to say about someone else, don't say it. That is almost true. And here's the thing. Don't say judgmental thing about other people, but one of the things that's really important is that when you're dealing with people that you trust, people in your inner circle, if someone is one of those 2 to 4% of people who are sneaky and slimy and intentionally using other people, networks and communities, and even super networks like this, they have an immune system that rejects people like that. And you have a moral obligation to tell the people like Joe, who are the super connectors, who are curating that, when you see something that's out of integrity. And then Joe and the other people who are curating their communities have a moral obligation to see if it's true, because one data point isn't enough. But when you have 5 people who are like, there's an issue there, then that allows us to keep the community functioning, right? And that's something that if I'll never say anything bad, that's not good. But if you make a habit of thinking negative thoughts towards others, saying bad things about other people, you might find one day you're that person who gets voted off the island because you deserved it, and you won't see it coming.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well done. All right.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Joe. So the next step, yours to take, very easy. Head on over to capabilityamplifier.com if you're just listening to this on the webpage, and subscribe to the podcast. And again, when you head on over, give this a rating and a review on iTunes. I'll send you a copy of the book for free. After you post the review, just head over to capabilityamplifier.com. Send me a voice message. Let me know you did it, and my assistant will send that book to you right away. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Good luck.
Dave.